Good evening, everybody. How's everybody doing? Come on, that was weak. How's everybody doing? All right, that's better. I know everyone's really excited to be here at the February Borough Board meeting. We're going to get right into it. Welcome, everybody. I'm going to start by calling the roll, and then we'll roll right into our agenda for tonight. Community Board 1. Community Board 2.
Present.
Community Board 3.
Present.
Community Board 4.
Present.
Community Board 5. Community Board 6. Community Board 7.
Here.
Community Board 8. Community Board 9. Community Board 10.
Here.
Community Board 11. Community Board 12.
Here.
Community Board 13. Community Board 14.
Here.
Community Board 15.
Here.
Community Board 16. Community Board 17. Community Board 18. Councilmember Barron. Councilmember Cornegie.
Here.
Councilmember Cumbo. Councilmember Deutsch. Councilmember Espinal. Councilmember Eugene. Councilmember Gentili. Councilmember Greenfield. Councilmember Lander. Councilmember Levin. Councilmember Mizell. Councilmember Mealy. Councilmember Menchaca. Councilmember Reynoso. Councilmember Traeger. Councilmember Williams.
Yeah.
Okay, we have a quorum. You'll all notice when you came in, there was a packet on the front table. It's our message of the month. It's a newsletter of what's going on in Borough Hall. There's a lot of things going on in Borough Hall, as I think you all know and have seen over the last couple of years. So rather than me sit here and repeat everything that's in this packet, I'll just call your attention to it. In addition to the newsletter, there's a number of flyers for upcoming events or upcoming initiatives. For example, next week we have our Senior Sweethearts event for couples that have been celebrating 50 years or more together. So if you know anyone in your districts or your constituencies who fit that qualification, please let us know. We'd love to host them here at Borough Hall for a special Valentine's Day celebration. And there's lots more in here as well. So please make sure you check this out. Share this with your community boards, with your constituents. If you need digital copies, we're happy to send you that as well and spread this message as far as wide as possible. We have to approve the minutes from both the November 2015 meeting and the January 2016 meeting. Copies, I did not distribute copies in advance because we were still making edits to them up until today. So copies are at the front table. I'll give you all a few moments now to to review them. And if we need to further amend them upon further review, we can always go back and do that. But I'll give you a minute now to review the minutes, see if you catch any changes. If not, we'll entertain a motion to accept the minutes for both November and January. I know it's riveting nonfiction. Give you guys just another minute. I know that both sets of minutes are fairly long because they were both very long meetings. Okay. Does anyone need more time? Okay, at this time, I'd like to entertain a motion to adopt the minutes from the November 2015 meeting.
Motion.
Teresa, motion. Do we have a second to that motion? Dr. Lau? Okay, great. Motion's been made and seconded. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Any abstentions? Okay, the minutes of November 2015 have been adopted. I'll now entertain a motion to accept the minutes of the January 2016 minutes. Do we have a motion? Do we have a second?
Seconded by 7.
Seconded by 7. Okay, great. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Any abstentions? Okay, great. No, it's just 2015?
Yeah.
That was just there to test you. I just wanted to make sure you were paying attention. Community Board 11 wins the prize tonight. Okay. We'll make that correction, and we'll make sure that the minutes are modified to reflect that. So we have a relatively short agenda for you all tonight. Our first agenda item is a presentation by the New York City Campaign Finance Board regarding their NYC Votes Voter Day initiative. At this time, I'd like to call Sean O'Leary and the Campaign Finance Board team to come up and make their presentation.
Hello, everyone. Seems like the mic is on. My name is Amanda Malillo. I'm here representing NYC Votes. I'm joined by my colleagues Sean O'Leary and Sabrina Castillo. We are from NYC Votes. We are the voter engagement arm of the New York City Campaign Finance Board, and we would like to talk to you a little bit tonight about an effort we're working on called Vote Better New York. As I'm sure many of you are aware in this room, I mean, the Iowa caucuses just happened yesterday. There's a lot of attention on the presidential race. But right here in New York City, we have a voter participation crisis. New York routinely ranks near the bottom across the nation for voter participation and turnout. In the 2014 election, we actually ranked 46th in the nation, so 45 other states beat us. Right here in Brooklyn, we know that 1 in 6 citizens of voting age are not registered to vote, and just under 20% turned out in the 2014 elections. We know from our voter engagement work that there are certain barriers to participation that people experience. First of all, we're in the year 2016 now, and most people still register to vote on pen and paper forms. And this leads to a lot of issues that we see every day when we're registering voters. People fill out their forms, they think that means they're registered, but sometimes mistakes are made sometime between the time when a voter signs a form and when the Board of Elections receives it. We know some people show up to the polls only to find out that there's a problem with their registration and they're turned away, or they have to cast an affidavit ballot. And people get frustrated, and if they have a bad experience at the polls, they don't come back. We also know from the GOTV calls we made this year, even in 2015, where there weren't a ton of exciting races on a lot of people's ballots, we still called around to all the people we registered, and we know that even though people might have wanted to go to the polls, because we only vote on Tuesday, and we're one of just a handful of states left that only allow our voters to vote on Tuesday, a lot of people couldn't make it to the polls. Maybe they were working a double shift in another borough. They didn't know far enough in advance to apply for an absentee ballot. And these are people who would have participated if we could vote early like we do, like most of the nation is doing right now. So these are some of the problems that we see day to day, and we know that a lot of New Yorkers want to participate and have a hard time. And something that we have done for the past 2 years, and this is our 3rd year running, is we have taken citizen volunteers up to Albany to talk about voting reform, because we believe one of the only ways to fix this is reform to state election law. To bring our voter registration into the 21st century by using available technology, to ensure that voters have more than one day to get to the polls so that they can have an opportunity to vote, and to make sure that they can cast a ballot that counts. Some of you may be aware that we switched over to the optical scan machines 6 years ago, and we are still voting on ballots designed for lever machines that actually cause a lot of issues at the polls in terms of readability. So yeah, this year, for the past 2 years, we brought 50 voters, or 50 engaged citizens, up to Albany our first year. Last year we doubled it to bring 100, and this year we're hoping to bring 250 people up to Albany to talk to their legislators about why election reform matters, particularly in a presidential year, when people are going to be paying attention to this issue. So now I'm going to turn the microphone over to my colleague Sean O'Leary, who's going to talk to you a little bit about the Vote Better New York effort we have been working on.
Hello, thank you. NYC Votes is formed with other organizations, Vote Better NY. We are an array of partners, not just from around New York City, but from around the state. And we're here tonight to reach out to you to help grow our New York City base. We would like to ask you to help join our efforts to improve the New York voting experience. We'd like you to reach out to us tonight or after this meeting to find out what can be done. There are different things that you can do as a partner. You can travel with us to Albany on May 3rd, or you could sign our petition. We have hard copies and we have a petition online. We are holding in-district meetings. We are asking people to write letters to their elected officials. There are different levels of partners. All are very important. We'd like to hear your voice. We'd like to hear your opinions of what to do and what you think. So with that, I'm going to turn you over to Sabrina, who'll go into more detail about the different levels of partners.
Good afternoon. Thank you for, good evening. Thank you for having us here today. As my colleagues have mentioned, we are in a crisis, and this is the moment to act. There is a lot of attention on the elections right now, and it's really hard on an off-year election when it's not federal or a municipal election to get people's attention, but we're out there and we're talking to people about what can make it easier for them to vote. These changes could only be made at a state level. They have to be changed in Albany, and the only way to push legislators to make these changes is to bring constituents from their districts up there to talk about early voting, for them to be able to pass bills that can make it easier for them to vote and read a simple ballot that doesn't look confusing to them. These changes will make it easier and have a better experience for New Yorkers to vote. What we're looking from you is to not only have the community boards involved and the constituents from your area, but to have the community-based organizations in your area that are already organizing around some of these issues and maybe doing voter registration and looking for other ways to get involved in the community. We're looking for those community-based organizations that have a strong voice in your community, who can enlist and bring people up to Albany with us. We will schedule the meetings for them to meet with their legislators so their legislators understand that this is an important issue for them. As Amanda mentioned, we're looking to bring up 250 residents from New York City, and we're going to bring about 250 from outside of New York City, because this is a New York State issue, not just a city issue, but we have started this coalition here. We will be reaching out to each individual community board, and we will be asking for your support by joining our initiative, signing up to come up to Albany, sharing our petition. We have a petition online where the constituents can sign. We can bring paper petitions to be brought to your meetings. If you share with us, if you have any special events, we are happy to come and also do petition drives and also register voters if you'd like for us to do that as well. And if you have community-based organizations who would like to join us with their members up in Albany, we would be happy to organize and coordinate for that. So we will be reaching, you will either be hearing from Amanda, Sean, or myself about coming to your meetings and reaching out to the community-based organizations and constituents in your area to be involved. Like I said, there are many ways to get involved. We're going to be doing a letter campaign, but right now we do have a very active petition campaign that we would like for you to get involved, and that's the first step. And once you join us as an organization for our Vote Better New York, you will be listed as a partner on our website, which will launch right after February 15th, right after President's Day, it'll launch. And we'd love your support. So if you have any questions, we are currently supporting 3 bills. And if you have any questions as to what those are, feel free to ask. We can ask any of those questions. If you have any other questions or any events you would like to invite us to, we're happy to hear you out. But we really are looking for the support, and this can only happen with the voice of the people. Legislators will listen to their constituents. We hope.
Thank you. Could you just go into a bit more detail as to what the specific reforms that
Yes.
you're advocating for are, so that people have that understanding?
Sure. So first of all, as I mentioned, we sort of have a 3-pronged platform. We want to make sure that everyone who wants to be registered to vote can easily register to vote. For example, right now at the DMV, you can give the DMV your information, and they electronically transmit that to the Board of Elections along with your signature. You don't have to fill out paper anymore. And we want to make sure that this option is available at other agencies that are already required to provide voter registration opportunities under the National Voter Registration Act, for example. So agencies like HRA or that are providing New Yorkers perhaps who don't have a driver's license services. So another thing that we would like to see is expanded online registration. Again, right now you can register to vote online if you're a DMV customer, but we know in New York City we have a system of public transportation. A lot of people here don't have driver's licenses and would like to be able to register with their social security number just like you can on a paper form right now. And there are also ways we can leverage technology to make sure people's addresses are automatically updated. One thing that we encounter all the time right now, we get people who ask us, oh, I moved, did my address, did the Board of Elections update my address? And we're always like, well, no, you have to re-register on a paper form. And people don't understand that. I mean, you can update your bank information online these days. Why can't you update your voting information online? So one of the bills we feel like accomplishes this is the Voter Empowerment Act, which is currently in the Assembly and the Senate. And it would also allow us to pre-register 16-year-olds and 17-year-olds so that their registration becomes active when they hit their 18th birthday. As I'm sure most people know, young people, particularly between the ages of 18 and 24, have lower registration and participation rates. This is one relatively easy way that we could get more of them registered, as soon as they're interacting with government, really. If they're going to the DMV for an ID for the first time at age 16, then why can't they register right there instead of coming back? Our second item is there is an early voting bill that is now in the Assembly and the Senate. I'm happy to provide the bill number after this. I do not have it off the top of my head. It would require a 2-week early voting period for New York State. And it would set some requirements, such as the number of polling locations based on county population size. It would also set a requirement for the number of hours the early voting would have to be offered. So it would be, a little before and a little after standard business hours, so that if people are working, they can still take advantage of voting early if they'd like to. So right here in Brooklyn, for example, because this county has a very large population, the Board of Elections would have to operate at least 7 polling locations. But that would be the floor and not the ceiling. They could operate more if they wanted to, because I imagine early voting would be popular here. And we know this helps cut down on long lines in other states. The third bill we are supporting is something called the Voter-Friendly Ballot Act, which the State Assembly has passed unanimously for the last 3 legislative sessions running. And each time the Senate fails to advance it. So we are working really hard in the Senate to make sure that they advance it this time. So maybe some of you remember shortly after we switched to the optical scanners in 2010, we had that problem where there was 8-point font size on the ballot and nobody could read it. This is a problem that would be corrected by this legislation, where you couldn't have font size smaller than 12 points on the ballot anymore, which I think would really help out some of our senior voters who have a tough time. We also know from some of our research that because our ballots are laid out for machines we're no longer using, some people vote incorrectly because they're confused. In one contest, they might accidentally vote for 2 candidates in opposite parties, and that vote doesn't count. And this is something that's easily fixed by a bill that should be non-controversial. It is something that was designed by usability professionals who their whole reason for existence is sort of to look at design and think about the easiest way to do things. And we feel like this is a great bill that would maybe cut down on some of those overvotes we see around the city. We know it's a not insignificant number of votes that are tossed out each election. We're talking in the thousands, and it might be a small percentage, but that's still thousands of people who thought their vote counted when it in fact didn't, because of easily correctable mistakes. So if anyone has questions on any of these bills, I'm happy to answer them further.
Assemblywoman Latrice Walker
Yeah.
has a bill. Is her bill one of those that you guys have supported?
We are looking into it. She introduced a more updated version of her bill after we had settled on this platform, but we are working with her office because we feel that her bill accomplishes a lot of the same aims. And we would be happy to just see a better voting registration system for all New Yorkers. And we want to make sure that New Yorkers can vote early. Because we know states who have implemented these reforms, they have higher turnout, they have better participation rates. States that make voting easier tend to realize benefits from that.
I think you've lit upon the problem, that if we do this, there'll be higher turnout rates, and there's more people voting. Which kind of begs the question, why would any of these bills that expand enfranchisement be controversial in any way? Why would you need two people, much less 250 people, which is not going to make a difference, I'm afraid to tell you. I really appreciate what you're doing. I think this is a noble pursuit. It's just that you're going to bring 250 people to Albany for one day, and they're going to get the glad hand, and they're going to take the Amtrak back, or a bus, and nothing's going to happen. I mean, the question is, why would we need to go to Albany to tell legislators to expand citizens? And we're not giving, legal aliens or anything like that the right to vote. This is for citizenship. Why would that be controversial? And who, and please name names, who in the state assembly or state senate, and I don't think this is a partisan thing, who would make a stand against it or try to block it?
I mean, that's a good question, and I'm sure your guesses are as good as mine. In our view,
But it's all on record.
this is not a partisan issue either. Well, that's the thing, right? A lot of people don't want to come out and say we want to make it harder for people to vote, but I think there are a lot of ways that Albany finds to not take action on things. And to your earlier point, something that we experienced was, for the past couple of years, we would go up there. Our volunteers got a great experience because part of this day, one of the original aims was to increase civic engagement and to teach regular citizen volunteers sort of how to be advocates, that it is their right to go and talk to their legislators and talk about what's going on in their lives, because a lot of people don't know that. So we would have a great day up there, and we would get a lot of good feedback, and then we would come home to New York City, and these issues would fade from view. So it has been one of our goals to really raise the visibility of this issue in a couple ways. First of all, we are building our work so that it's year-round, so that they are hearing from their constituents not just on one day a year, but on many days a year. For example, we were attending a lot of in-district meetings with them this fall, and we hope with the people we bring to Albany in May, we hope a lot of them come back with us to those in-district meetings in the fall again. And we are doing things like the petition drive, or encouraging people to write letters to their legislators. Unfortunately, we've seen a lot of inertia around voting reform, and that is why we think one of the ways to move the goalposts forward a little bit is to get more people active and invested in this issue.
Yeah, my concern is that we need to update the registry at the board of election, because most people are on it that has been dead over 20 years. Mm-hmm. And there's a lot of people whose registered has not been updated to the list. So that causes confusion when they arrive at the polling site, because their name is not on it. Some people don't like to vote on just a regular absentee.
Absolutely, and we encounter that all the time, where people submit their forms, but for whatever reason they don't get on the voter rolls, or there's a mistake with their address. They show up at the place they think is their polling location, but it isn't. And we know for a lot of first-time voters, if they don't have a good experience at the polls that first time, they're not going to come back. We are turning people off democracy at the front door here. And, there are a lot of ways we could be fixing this. And, it seems to us, it takes a lot to get Albany to move on some things, and sometimes it takes years and a whole lot of effort. So I think we are prepared to go back year after year, honestly.
Correct me if I'm wrong, but you indicated that people are still voting on ballots for the old machines, which is not true. The ballots for the old 11 machines cannot fit in the new machines. Those are new design ballots that they have designed to actually fit the new machines.
Perhaps I should clarify. So when we have tried talking to election administrators about how to make the ballot clearer, they say they can't do it because they are very closely governed by what is in state election law. And that state election law was written for machines we aren't using. And it hasn't been updated to give election administrators very much flexibility or to reflect the machines that we are using. So this is what this bill would do. And honestly, if you look at a ballot, I tell this story a lot, you can see how, say you have multiple candidates for a contest. Oftentimes they trail onto the second line, and this is not how anyone really designs their ballots anymore. So you'll have usually the Democrat and Republican up front because they're always at the top of the ticket, and you have a lot of minor parties that trail onto the second line. And that is something that we could fix with better ballot design laws, because a lot of people who are voting on those minor party lines accidentally vote for two candidates because they think they're straight ticket voting, and then their vote is tossed out.
I just think perhaps you can look into that a little more because some of the state laws have been changed for the new voting machine.
I mean, we will continue to do so, and we have tried to work with the Board of Elections and other election administrators, and we are often told that, you know, they are very confined by what the state law says. And I think it's worth noting that the Board of Elections is very supportive of the Voter-Friendly Ballot Act. They want this. They go to Albany and ask for it too. And even the state election commissioners want this also. So all the people who are in the know and ballot design is their life, they want this law, and it just isn't getting passed in the Senate.
Teresa?
In the beginning, you said 1 in 6, 20% in the 2014 election.
We're not registered citizens of voting age here in
So-
Brooklyn.
You're talking how many, 20% of what? Of your voter base, voters voting?
20% of citizens of voting age. So if you look at the registered voters as a base, it's around 24% turnout here in Brooklyn. But it's usually a better measure to look at the citizen voting age population because a lot of people who could be voting are not registered to vote. And then it's 19.9% turned out among citizens who are 18 years and older.
So that includes eligible but not registered.
Correct.
What year was that?
That was for 2014.
2014.
Yes. We will be updating it in our annual report that we release at the end of April, so we will have new data.
That's an abysmal participation rate, less than 20% of eligible voters in this borough. That's abysmal.
And not for nothing, like we were electing a governor in 2014, you know, and Congress in the state.
Right.
So
Do you have any context for the general as compared to the primary? Because here, outside of a few districts, the game, you know, if you're a consultant for an election, you get let go once the primary is over. You know, how bad? What is the, you know? Because in that sense, it is something of a partisan issue. Here, you know, you'll hear people. You know, I grew up in Windsor Terrace. You know, I hear a lot of people go, "Oh, I'll vote," and well, you know, they think the election's only in November, but the reality is that the real game is in September.
yeah, I mean, honestly, that's something we work on. What we see in our data when we look at city turnout rates, a lot of people, most people who turn out to vote do vote in both elections, but you have a handful of voters that only vote in November, and you have a handful that only vote in the September primary. You know, this coming year we have far more primaries, so I will probably have some updated numbers for you.
Okay, what I'm saying is the abysmal number, to borrow Andrew's phrase, even more abysmal, I assume, for the primary?
Yeah, it's usually a little more abysmal than
Any
the
context
general.
for how much more?
I don't have those numbers off the top of my
Okay.
head.
My gosh.
I wanted
Yeah.
to,
We're happy to follow up with those.
Sure.
you opened up a can of worms here.
Yeah, no,
But, you know, you can't help but make inferences when I hear these.
oh yeah,
Oh, I'm
thanks for the
sorry.
time.
you can't help but make inferences when hearing this information, and maybe it's not our place to make inferences, but the inference that I make is that it benefits the establishment and the vested interests that there aren't more people. Every new voter who wanders into a polling booth is a wild card, especially for an incumbent. That's not a good thing. There's the incumbency rate, the correlation or the negative correlation between the number of people who vote every year and the rate of incumbency, to me, there's something to that. Doesn't prove a cause, but the writing's on the wall. And these are the same people who were asking to change laws to increase voter participation. There's the irony. I don't know how this works. I used to have one of our senior board members come and represent CB7 here at the Borough Board. But if I could, Andrew, I would make a motion from the floor that this board send a letter to every state legislator in Brooklyn asking them point blank if they intend to support the legislation that the New York, I'm sorry, your name is the New York Campaign Finance Board?
We're NYC Votes. We work with Vote Better.
Vote Better and Why.
Okay,
is the coalition.
someone in the Assembly has proposed this legislation. The bill has been written.
Yeah.
If we could ask the Brooklyn members, the Brooklyn delegation of both the Assembly and the Senate, whether or not they intend to support this law, or these laws, these intros, and if so, if not, why not? Why not? I mean, that would actually give us clarification, if nothing else.
Sure, so I think that's a great
If
idea.
if
So what
I can do that, I don't know if I can.
No, you're free to make that motion from the floor. What I would ask is if we can take some time over between this meeting and the next meeting to further hone in on the exact bills that we're talking about and the purpose of each legislation, and then you can produce that resolution or that motion at the following meeting.
Absolutely.
And that we will have more clarity to the detailed request.
Andrew,
It
is
seems
it
like we-
possible for you to get those bills and maybe forward them to us so we could read them?
Absolutely.
Yeah, so
Absolutely.
we are happy to follow up, and we can send the bills and a written proposal for you to see what our platform is. And this is exactly why we're here. This is exactly what we're looking for. This is an array of partners. This is not just NYC Votes putting this forward. This can only be successful with your voice. And we want you at the table to ask these questions and discuss this and push this if this is our goal for this meeting. And as we continue to move forward and looking for people to come on board, we do have Voter Day partner meetings where there is other people at the table that also bring up concerns and issues and questions. And this is the only way to make this a success and a comprehensive platform that will be able to shake things up a little bit in Albany.
Thank you. I'm happy to wait until next month, Andrew, since
I
it's
think it'd be great. And we'll get the bills. We'll forward around to everyone. We can work on drafting something in the interim and then share it with the board for next month. Sorry, right before you, Jermaine, Mike.
Just a point of clarification, you said it has a sponsor, and I've worked for the state assembly. Does it have a sponsor in the Senate? I mean, because I know you're saying you're trying to avoid partisanship, but
Which bill are you referring?
any of them,
There is a sponsor for both in the House and Senate for the Voter Empowerment Act, and I believe there is one for early voting.
and I know that you're trying to avoid partisanship, but do you have a Republican sponsor in the Senate?
Not at this time.
Okay.
Jermaine?
I was just going to ask that he mentioned that Latrice Walker has a bill, and for the sake of the Borough Board, can we get a copy of that when we're considering the other bills as well?
Absolutely. So that's perfectly fine. I have a couple of clarifying questions as well, and then we can either adopt a resolution to specifically endorse these three bills, or we can do a bit more of an expansive approach to consider some other reforms that maybe haven't made the coalition's priority list yet, but are still worthy of supporting. So we'll work on pulling that together and forwarding it all on to you, so everyone can have a chance for comment and input, and we can proceed from there. Does that sound okay? Like a good plan of action? Yep. Okay. Just a couple of clarifying questions. With regards to working with other agencies, I don't recall, I got my ID NYC. I don't remember if they asked that question on the form. Are you working with, or are you currently able to work with the New York City municipal ID card for registration purposes?
Do you want to field that question, actually? Talk about L29.
Yeah, so we do have a local law 29, and it's just been updated with Directive 1 from the mayor's office, where agencies have a mandate to provide voter registration opportunities, but they're not in correlation with these particular bills, or, for example, we're not able to forward and update voter registration information to the Board of Elections. That's part of what we're trying to do with these. So while we can work with them to register people, unless, for example, the Voter Empowerment Act, right, passes or something similar to that, we would not be able to use that information collected there to update Board of Elections information or your registration information.
Okay.
Oh, yeah. So how we work with a number of city agencies right now, and they are providing paper forms. We work with the mayor's office and city council to look at what agencies to expand to. I think we would love to expand to the NYCID offices. I don't believe they're collecting voter registrations at this time, right? So yeah, theoretically, one day, if the Voter Empowerment Act were to pass, we could look at local law 29 agencies who could start collecting registration information electronically and start implementing that as well.
So state law currently prohibits you from doing that, is what we're saying, just to clarify.
Yeah, so there's a very technical, I have two answers to that, actually. First of all, at DCAS, they are piloting an electronic registration system where they would bring the form to an electronic platform, but because we have an electronic signature issue in New York where the Board of Elections believes you need a pen and paper signature. So what they would do is create an electronic form, send that information to the Board of Elections, but still capture your signature with wet ink. But that is sort of open to interpretation, what does signature really mean under state law, and the Voter Empowerment Act would update it. So like if you are signing a pad like you would with your credit card, like you're doing at the DMV, like your signature, your electronic signature could be used as your voter registration signature. So that is part of the holdup with doing this at city agencies right now.
And one final question. With regards to expanding voter access, you talked about making the ballots easier to read and putting forth that legislation. What about, I know there's been a number of bills introduced to expand the number of languages and the types of languages that ballots are produced in, and right now there's a limited number of foreign languages that ballots are available in. It's my understanding that there's been legislation, I know specifically with the Russian language and a few others that have not passed the legislature. Does the coalition of the campaign work on those types of issues as well? Are those not part of that current proposal?
So at this time, it is not in the Vote Better NY platform, but the New York City Campaign Finance Board and NYC Votes have always supported expanding the number of languages that the ballot is available in, and we continue to advocate for those changes.
Okay, great. Thank you very much. Any last questions?
Andrew, that last question is very important.
Well, thank you. It was my question.
Yeah, not only the Russian language, but Haitian Creole, the areas where we are, is a big issue. So in terms of the recommendations that might come back to the Borough Board, if you would put something there asking for an enhancement of language availability and specify the Russian language and Haitian Creole, that would be appreciated.
Yeah, I was just mentioning that one because I knew there was a bill, but you're right. There's many more languages that are currently not available for ballots currently.
So right now, it's the top 5 languages are required on ballots. The City Campaign Finance Board has supported, I believe, expanding it to the top 9, which would include Creole and Russian and I think a couple others. We might even support expanding it beyond the top 9. And I know that there are bills at the state level and in City Council, I believe, that would expand the languages available.
Great. So we have some homework to do. We have some work to do. I think that there's a lot of good stuff here. And whether we do it all at once, we break it up into little bits and pieces, little bits, chunks. Either way, I think it's a good issue for the Borough Board to work on. I'm going to ask now at the end of the meeting, come up and tell me if there are members of the Borough Board specifically who want to help work on this. And, division of labor is always a good thing. So if we will form a subcommittee to kind of look into this and pull together a proposal for the board, that would be really appreciated. You don't have to identify yourself now, but after the meeting, please come up and see me, and we'll try to get a small committee together to work on this. And for those that are interested, the Brennan Center for Justice does a lot of work on these issues, especially in New York State. So if you're curious for some good reading, you can check out the Brennan Center for Justice at NYU School of Law, and they have a wealth of information on voting laws in New York State. Thank you very much. Thank you. So,
Thank you.
I know we had a number of people join us after I called roll and during the presentation, so if you joined the meeting and you weren't here for the roll call, please announce yourselves. Councilmember Menchaca's office. Councilmember Cumbo's office. Jack, Councilman Deutsch's office.
Councilmember Williams' office.
Councilmember Williams. Okay. Anyone else? Councilmember Barron's office. Terrific. Okay, great. So the next two agenda items, at our last meeting, we talked about using this year to talk more about some of the policy initiatives coming out of the Borough President's office and finding ways to increase support for them and get input from the Borough Board on different policy initiatives that we're working on. So tonight on the agenda, we have two such presentations that we're going to hear from Borough Hall staff on some ongoing work here in our office. The first presentation, we're going to flip the order here, is a presentation on Borough President Adams' hospital funding initiative. And to lead that presentation is our health policy analyst, Atalia Granshaw. Atalia?
Do they have copies of this yet?
Not yet.
Good evening, everybody. Good evening. Don't look so excited. Good evening. So I want to talk really briefly. Sure, Italia Granshaw. I want to talk briefly about the Brooklyn hospitals and the situation. Now, I'm not going to go at length about it because we could really be here all day talking about the current situation in the state of health of our Brooklyn hospitals. But I do want to talk to you about a letter that we're sending to the governor and a proposed resolution that is before you about clarity from the governor about the $700 million that was mentioned in his budget last year in 2015, specifically allocated for Brooklyn healthcare. Now, these funds it was speculated these funds were earmarked for Brookdale, to close Brookdale Hospital and to build a new hospital in its place. Then it was speculated that no, it was going to be used to, I guess, enhance Brookdale's hospital system. To date, we haven't heard specifically what the plans are. Now, this was a year ago. We did send a letter to the governor asking for clarity, and as of today, we haven't heard anything. So we are sending a letter to him. Now, in 2015, our hospitals are still in crisis. The hospitals that we normally hear about are Brookdale, Interfaith, Kingsbrook, Wyckoff. Brooklyn Hospital seems to be doing a little better, but it's still in crisis. These hospitals serve primarily Central and North Brooklyn. At the same time, we have some of these larger healthcare systems moving into Brooklyn. Northwell, formerly LIJ, is now in partnership with Maimonides Hospital. Northwell is the 7th largest healthcare system in the United States. NYU Langone is now in Sunset Park, NYU Lutheran, and they're going to be expanding and pumping millions of dollars into that section of Brooklyn. New York Presbyterian in talks with Methodist, and that partnership, New York Presbyterian Methodist, serving the Brooklyn Heights Park Slope area of Brooklyn. So there's two different scenarios going on. There's parts of Brooklyn that are seeing millions of dollars invested for strengthening the infrastructure, and then Central and North Brooklyn, where there are communities of need that clearly need aid from the governor. Now, what happens when we don't have transparency from our leadership is that there's rumors of mergers, rumors of closings, and patients and people who work in this industry are left disenchanted. So imagine, you go to work every day and you hear that your office might close, but it might not, or it might, you don't know. So this is really what we're asking for the governor and the leadership at the State Department. to do. So the resolution before you this evening is asking for not only transparency, but community engagement and engagement of elected officials, also on a citywide level. There may be talks in Albany about what's going to be happening with this money, but we really need to engage our citywide officials as well. So we're going to pass around a copy of the letter, and the resolution you have before
So
you.
the resolution is available. That's for consideration. It'll be formally proposed next month, but following our practice, we want everyone to take it back, review it, talk to your boards, et cetera.
And then I'm going to pass the letter around. We're circulating this letter around with our state, or with our Brooklyn delegation, both state and assembly members. I know we have a lot of council offices here. Please take this back to your principal and see if they want to sign on as well.
And community boards?
And community boards too. The letter is dated on the 5th, so please, my information is on the letter. If you can kindly get back to me, really by tomorrow or Thursday, we want to make sure that we get this out, and there will be a press release along with this letter.
That's not gonna happen.
What?
I mean, you're asking if the community board is gonna sign on to it, and if you want to know that by tomorrow?
Well, with the elected officials, that can happen. That we can have a one-day turnaround. With the community boards, you have to take it to your board. I guess we can do
And
a
we could-
separate.
We're gonna, if the resolution that we're proposing is passed in March, we will then send a copy of that resolution up to the people who this letter is addressed to as well as a follow-up. So if you're not able to sign on to it by the close of this letter, there'll be another opportunity to make sure that your board is on board, if you will, with the tone and tenor and sentiments of the proposal.
And through this resolution dated February 2nd, it says hospital closing, singular, meaning that it's just one hospital that might close as opposed to hospital closing, plural.
Let me pull up my copy here.
It's in the port whereas,
Okay.
Hospital
So that should
closings,
be.
closings.
plural.
And see, and part of the issue is why we want to do this resolution and why we're sending this letter is because we are uncertain as to what, is it closing or closings, what's happening with these hospitals. Back in 2011, there was a recommendation by the MRT Brooklyn Work Group to merge some of the hospitals, Wyckoff, Interfaith, it was Brookdale, to merge some of them and perhaps close others, and we still don't really know what's going on. I mean, ideally, it'd be great if the State Department and the governor would come to Brooklyn and have a community panel and speak to everybody. Even if they're unclear as to what they want to do, get that community engagement and get that voice, and have that voice in their planning process. That's what we're really asking for, is Brooklyn needs to have a voice and a seat in that process.
Question?
I'm confused with the time frame on this. You want the boards, the community boards, to sign off on this letter. It's dated this week. I mean, our committee is meeting tomorrow, so it's too late to get it to them, and our board meets next week.
Yeah, so like we just said, we know that for some boards, it's not possible to get onto the letter. For the council members who are part of the Borough Board, if your council members want to sign on with the letter by the end of this week, that would be terrific. Please let Italia know. For the community boards that can't make that decision by now, when we introduce the resolution formally in March, and hopefully it gets approved, that'll be an opportunity for your board to weigh in on this issue. The substance of the resolution and the substance of the letter are nearly identical, just different wording. So you'll still have a chance to make a statement on this issue and be part of this same initiative. And then we will have a follow-up letter. And the idea here is to use the resolution to create additional leverage in our requests to the legislature. So first we send the letter, and then we ratchet up the pressure by saying, now we have all of Brooklyn speaking with one voice through the Borough Board, asking for some action on this. So it helps us raise us to that next level. So the boards will have a chance to be part of that.
For us, it would be I know for us, this would probably not be able to make our February meeting. We could make our March meeting, which would be mid-March.
I think the idea is that you'll have a chance to take it back. If the subcommittee can consider it, ideally the the practice that we've been adopting is to give boards a chance to weigh in on this. There is no requirement either in the charter or our bylaws to require each individual board sign off on these before we vote as a whole board, but I know everyone wants a chance to kind of flesh it out and talk to people. So whatever works best for your board, if you're able to have a conversation on it at some point, either at the committee level for further input or at the board level, whatever works best. That's
Yeah,
what
well,
we're asking
we
for.
would give this to our health committee, which we really missed their meeting. They meet at the beginning of the month. So they wouldn't meet till the first week of March. And then the board would be the second week of March to take it, for that committee to make a recommendation to our full board.
Okay. And if we can't get every individual board's, individualized input on this, that's okay as well. Like I said, there's no requirement that we have that. It's just more of a courtesy that we try to extend to everyone, knowing that a lot of boards prefer to the extent possible, operate in that manner.
Excuse me? No, that's the letter that's going to go out. If you have a friendly amendment or edit, you can surely send it my way. We can see what we can do, maybe, if you have an issue with the letter, but that's the letter that we're looking to send out. ASAP, preferably tomorrow.
When's the drop dead?
Tomorrow's Wednesday?
Third.
Thursday, noon.
Thursday noon. Okay. Any other questions? Okay, great. Thank you very much. Thank you, Talia.
Thank you, everyone. Have a good evening.
All right. And last but certainly not least is our next agenda item, which is a discussion of the Borough President's Code Brooklyn initiative, led by our education analyst, Jeff Lowell. Code Brooklyn is an initiative that focuses on computer science education throughout the borough, so I'll let Jeff take it from there.
Hi, good evening. Thank you for giving me a few minutes to talk about Code Brooklyn. So first of all, I think I brought it in after a lot of you arrived, but there's a flyer on the desk up front, table up front. Please grab one on your way out. It kind of gives you the bare bones structure of what Code Brooklyn is. I'm going to talk about it a little bit, but this is something to kind of refresh your memory when you're thinking about it. There's also a press release on how we beat Chicago in the Hour of Code Challenge, so make sure you take that back to your boards as well. It's always good to brag on Brooklyn a little bit. And then we have the resolution, which we're going to talk about. So Code Brooklyn is an initiative the Borough President put forth, which has a very simple goal, and that is to bring computer science to every single student in Brooklyn. And that's regardless of grade level or circumstances. Every student should have access to computer science. And don't let the coding part fool you. It's really computer science. Coding is kind of the buzzword in computer science now, but we really are talking about computer science overall. And really the impetus behind this is that Brooklyn is a center of technology. It's a hub for technology in this country, which basically means the world. And so there's no reason that Brooklyn students shouldn't be filling the technology jobs that are being created right here in Brooklyn. And so to fill those jobs, you need to have the education, you need to have access to the curriculum that teaches you the skills that you need for those 21st century jobs. We don't know, a student entering kindergarten today, we have no idea what type of programs and technology they're going to work with when they graduate and go into the workforce. What we do know is that it will likely be tech related, and they're going to need certain skill sets, and that's logical reasoning, critical thinking, problem solving, and creativity. And computer science brings all of those things to our students, and I think it doesn't get enough credit for the creativity part. If you had been with the Hour of Code students during last December, which I'll talk about in a minute, you'd see how creative they became on their initial foray into computer science and coding. So the goal is to bring computer science to every student in Brooklyn over the next 7 years. And it's kind of a five-pronged approach. The first one is already finished. We competed in we took part in the Hour of Code during Computer Science Education Week in December. And for those of you who aren't familiar with Hour of Code, it's an initiative put on by code.org. It takes place in over 180 countries worldwide. Tens of millions of students take part during Computer Science Education Week. And we put forth a pretty valiant effort this year to get every single Brooklyn district school to take part in the Hour of Code. And we got about 400 Brooklyn schools to take part, which gave us about 80% of Brooklyn schools. So it was a pretty good turnout, we thought. And so thousands and thousands of Brooklyn students who had not been exposed to coding and computer science before got a chance to be exposed to it this year. And as I mentioned before, we had a friendly competition with Chicago. They got, I think, 61% of their schools to take part. So we won that. We're awaiting they're supposed to record a song about Brooklyn by some of their students. We're still waiting for that video recording, but we certainly can update you when we get it. And that's the press release I was referring to. It gives you the exact statistics of how many schools took part. And I'm happy to report some districts had 100% participation. Every district school, every high school took part in the Hour of Code. So the Hour of Code was done not just as exposure, but also a nice connection for us with the schools. And also to give the schools some idea of what computer science really is. I can't tell you how many phone calls and panicked emails I got from schools who signed up to do the Hour of Code and then said, what is it? And so they thought they were going to have to enter zeros and ones into the computer with the students, and so we made a quick video, it was like 20 minutes long, and sent it out. And once the principals watched it and the teachers watched it, they said, oh, we can do this, and this is a great thing to bring to our students. And so that's how we got our participation up so high. And we had 5th graders teaching 1st graders how to do it. So it's accessible at all grade levels. They have there's curricula out there that can be accessible for any student to get exposure. So it was a really great connection for us with the schools, and that brings us to step 2 of the Code Brooklyn, which is capacity assessment of Brooklyn schools. And this has several components. And first of all is, does the school have the Wi-Fi that it needs to be able to offer computer science as a full component of their curriculum? Do they have the equipment, the computers, the lab equipment that they will need to do this? Do they have trained teachers who know how to teach computer science? That's a part that often gets missed. You can give a student all the computer labs and all the equipment you want, but if the teachers aren't familiar with how to use them, they're just going to sit there. You have laptops that are effectively paperweights. And then is the curriculum available to the schools that they understand how to access? And is there community support behind the schools, which is, community engagement is a critical part of how schools work. So we are sending out a survey. It's probably going to go out tomorrow. I'm not making any promises, but that gets to a lot of these questions, asking principals where they stand in terms of readiness to accept computer science program as a full-time part of their curriculum. And once we get that back, we'll use those assessments to help channel our capital funding from the Borough President's capital funding to schools that have the highest needs. If there are schools that don't have Wi-Fi, we'll try to give capital funding to fix that, and same with equipment, computers that the schools need. There are certain things that we can't address, that capital funding can't be used for, and so the next phase is to help connect all of those schools to the CS for All, the mayor's initiative on computer science, which his goal is to have the whole city have computer science in the next 10 years. And it's really a nice fit between the two initiatives, because we're working kind of from the ground up, the equipment, the infrastructure, to make sure the schools have what they need. And CS for All from the mayor's office is kind of working on the teacher training side of it to make sure that schools have the teachers, the professional development that they need so they can have these programs in place as well. And so our goal is to connect schools to the CS for All programs as they become available. And actually, I think they just went live, their first application yesterday. So we've been connecting with Brooklyn schools already to say, make sure you're applying for this if you're ready for it. And if you're not ready for it, why aren't you ready and how can we help? And then finally, we're looking to put some bills in Albany that would make computer science a required part of the curriculum before you can graduate with your degree. And so those have not been introduced yet, but they will be coming, and that's kind of one of the final components of the Code Brooklyn initiative. So that's it in a nutshell. I'm happy to answer any questions.
Anyone have any questions? That's pretty.
I have a question.
All right.
From the survey that you did for our code, is it broken down by districts and community districts so we can get it and share it with our constituents?
So we have several surveys. So we have a survey that's going out in the next day or so to ask about computer science readiness to the schools. We do have information if you're asking about which schools within the districts took part in the Hour of Code. I have it broken down by CEC district. Yeah, so I can certainly share that with you. I can share the percentages and let you know how many schools took part and how many who didn't. And we had great support from the superintendents in every district. And in fact, the superintendents who really got out there and got after their schools, the districts where we had 100% participation are pretty close. But the superintendents were really supportive of helping us get this out. But I'm happy to share that with you. I'll get it to Andrew and he can.
We'll distribute that to everyone at large.
Yep.
Any additional questions? Yes?
I was watching a program on, I think it was either PBS or Nova, and it was about a sort of like a game where people all over the world were participating in the game to solve a scientific problem, right? So it was, I think one was called Fold It, and there was another one, and people were actually solving real science problems in terms of when you're looking at different structures and how to do. So I was wondering if that, were you aware of this, and did this have anything to do, or are there any plans to incorporate that to give the computer science some motivation for young people to actually participate?
Yeah, so I'm going to preface this.
And for it to be meaningful, not just science, but we're doing science to make a better world.
Sure. I just want to preface this. I have a couple of comments on that, but I'll preface it by saying that I am not a computer science, I'm not a programmer, I'm not a coding expert, I'm a lawyer. I'm speaking about this as someone who's not an expert on computer science. But a couple of things. The Hour of Code, the curriculum that schools could use, they had stuff they could choose from, was essentially, they do look a lot like games to the students. It's not putting in 0 and 1s, there's drag and drop, and you really have to logically figure out how to solve the problem that's in front of you. So that may have been similar to what you've seen, but it sounds a little bit more what you may have seen as something like a hackathon, where a bunch of students teams get together and they all have the same challenge, and they collaborate together, they work to try to solve the problem, and sometimes they come up with different solutions to the same problems, and they announce a winner or something like that. It sounds something similar to what you saw, but there are all sorts of, particularly as students become more, if we're starting students on computer science in the elementary schools, as they progress, they're going to need more and more challenges, and what I would consider a very difficult challenge in computer science, it will very quickly become easy to them, and they'll need sort of challenges like you're talking about. And I love the idea of collaboration, not just with a team within their school, but across schools, across districts. And we're even thinking about next year doing the Hour of Code. We challenged Chicago this year, and we're thinking about next year challenging some cities on the West Coast, but also maybe some of our sister cities internationally, so that students can kind of collaborate and work together across country borders. And I love programs like that. And I'm not an expert. I don't know what exactly you saw, but it sounds a lot like a kind of a hackathon, maybe a bigger version of a hackathon with maybe some more practical applications. But yeah.
Can you expand upon what you mean by legislative changes to make computer science a required part of the curriculum? Could you
Sure. So
expand?
right now, you can graduate from high school with a degree, and you don't have to have taken any type of computer science.
So you want it to be a high school requirement?
One of the requirements to get a diploma, I think, is essentially what we're looking for. And
so does that mean I could have taken it in 8th grade? I'm asking.
Right. I don't think we're when you graduate, you have to have a certain number of credits in every subject. I don't think we're being as specific as saying you have to take it in 8th grade, you have to take it in this grade, but we're saying that before you get a diploma, you should have some computer science credits. So that's what we're looking for. And that's a state level. They set the required curriculum. Schools are allowed to make changes to the curriculum as long as they meet certain basic requirements. And some schools offer computer science now and have amazing computer science programs. We want to make sure every school has that option so that students are at least exposed to it.
I guess what I'm thinking is computer science, I'm imagining at high school. I've never taken it in high school. I was only exposed in college. It's just qualitative reasoning. So, or I'm sorry, quantitative reasoning. So the kid who wants to just excel and go on and take, say, more advanced math would be meeting those same learning targets and criteria. And so is it, I don't know, I just would like to hear more about that before, as we move on with this idea. That's all.
Sure. And I think that the computer science would probably fall under the mathematics department. I mean, again, I'm not a computer science.
A quantitative study.
Yeah.
But I just need some thought. I just need some information.
Sure.
Yeah, I was going to ask questions pertaining to the legislation. I understand you have legislation, a bill. Where does the chancellor fit in this? You say you want to make it part of the curriculum. Where does the chancellor fit in?
Well, the chancellor, that would fall probably under the CS for All, the mayor's initiative. But this is a state level curriculum, so the chancellor isn't under the state, under the, I mean, she has to work with under the state law. So this would be a state level change, not a city level change like the chancellor. And I think the chancellor is supportive of CS for All and bringing computer science to students. I haven't spoken to her specifically about the actual state level curriculum change. Sorry.
Hi, I would like to find out if you're going to do anything under the preschool level. We do work with the STEAM, which is, as you know, is science, technology, engineering, art, and math, and it's at a preschool level. Working with the, now they call it the Pre-K for All, it used to be Universal Pre-Kindergarten, and the Head Starts and the childcare. We have computers in the classroom for the children, believe it or not, and they are able to operate them. And I think that I commend the borough president for what he's doing. And we did speak to him about working with the younger children as well with this.
So I know that there's curriculum available for pre-K in computer science. We're basically calling for, elementary school, middle school, high school to have an option, an access to a computer science course. I don't see why it couldn't be expanded to pre-K or to preschool, but it's not something that we were calling for, partly because they don't exactly fit under the district structure. They're often in district schools, but they don't fall under the district structure, and we're just trying to fit it into the existing structure. But there's no reason why they couldn't.
And maybe something you could look into to
certainly.
see how our younger children can benefit from.
Yeah, I know we've met with people who do computer science curriculum who have curricula for younger students. And,
Jeff, I'm somewhat troubled by your response as to whether the Board of Education, whether this proposal has been run past them, if you're going to call for the state to make changes in something that would affect the Department of Education. So it would seem to me that Eric, acting on behalf of the Borough of Brooklyn, should at least have that interface with the city official who is charged with education before going up to Albany to ask for change in the state.
Okay, I'm happy to pass that.
And just to clarify, the mayor with his Computer Science for All initiative and the chancellor who's supporting and carrying out that initiative, we're all on the same page. The borough president, the mayor, the chancellor, in terms of seeing all students in New York City having access to computer science education and to be exposed to this over the next couple of years. And that's why they're rolling this out over a decade-long plan to make sure that every student has access to that. Our proposal, or what we're talking about up at Albany, in no way conflicts with that, and this just says that the Board of Regents has these standards and curriculum that we have to follow, Common Core or other things, that we want to see computer science included in the statewide curriculum. That's how important this is. It's not enough to say for everyone to do this just because they want to. We think that it's so important that it should be mandated as part of the statewide curriculum that comes down from the Board of Regents and the Education Department. And it's in no way in conflict with the mayor's goal, the chancellor's goal, or anyone else at the Department of Education. We're all doing this together. And as Jeff said, the beauty of our Code Brooklyn initiative and the Computer Science for All initiative is that they kind of fit together. One comes from the bottom up and the other comes from the top down. And so really, by doing this, we're trying to give the city more tools and more ability. Once we have a formal legislative draft, of course, we're going to be talking with city partners and the mayor's office to get their help in lobbying for it. But I don't want there to be any confusion that there's any conflict or competing nature between what the chancellor is doing and the mayor is doing and what we're discussing here. It's totally complementary.
So that if in fact, in terms of policy reforms that you mentioned, it won't be an option, it would be required that somewhere before a child graduates that they have a certain level of computer science.
Right. The option part, we want every school grade to have an option of having like if a student, say a student gets.
I'm confused with option. I'm confused.
Yeah, no. So we want students to have the option to take computer science in courses at all grade levels. If they have an interest in, early on, we want them to be able to, foster that interest all the way up and through. But then by the time they graduate, we want to make sure that every student has had at least some credit or so in computer science, some sort of requirement before they graduate.
And this is at a high school level?
Well, before they graduate high school, they'd have to have the credit requirements.
So
Yeah.
we're saying that the credit should be applied in high school as opposed to earlier grade?
Yes.
I like it.
Okay, any additional questions? It was really remarkable that we had 80% of schools in Brooklyn, public schools in Brooklyn, compete in this Hour of Code challenge. Really was phenomenal. Chicago talked a lot of a big game. There were videos going back and forth. You can find it on the Hour of Code website. Chicago talked a big game, but we showed them that Brooklyn has the best pizza and the best students. So we win on both accounts. Thank you very much, Jeff.
Thank you.
Okay, so we're almost done. At the last, before we continue, is there any old business anyone wants to discuss? So at our last meeting, we discussed a bylaw subcommittee, and a few people volunteered at the end of the meeting to come up. I'm going to ask the members of the bylaw subcommittee who are here today just to stay for a few extra minutes. Right now, I want to just schedule a date and time that we can all get together and meet and start working on this process. Additionally, for those of you who are interested in working on some of these election law reforms that we heard the presentation on earlier, and you're interested in being on that subcommittee, please stay after just for a few minutes so I can see who you are and we can come up with a quick game plan for the next month or so. Did anyone have any questions about that?
Not about that.
Okay. Other questions?
Yeah, there was a handout on the front table, and it's on Councilmember Steve Levin's letterhead, but there's a stapled piece on the front that says it's a letter to Councilmember Levin. So is this a letter that he has sent or a letter that he's being asked to send?
We've asked Councilmember Levin's office for clarity. It's my understanding that he did not send this letter, but we're asking his office for further clarity. So once we have an answer from him, we'll forward that on to the rest of the Borough Board, okay? Anyone have any new business to discuss?
Andrew?
Yes.
I just want to, I went online to reapply, apply for reappointment.
Good reminder, okay.
And I just wanted to commend whoever came up with that user design.
Someone went through our Hour of Code program and they came up with that great application. No,
Well, whoever did it, I want to commend them. It was really easy, it was great, and it was very simple. I could understand it, so that's...
Great, thank you very much. That's a reminder. For those of you that have not or forgot, please let everyone know community board applications are due February 15th. That's a Monday and it's a holiday, so a lot of places are closed, including our office. So don't think you have a 3-day weekend and you forget to apply. The applications for community board appointments, reappointments, and new appointments, February 15th, midnight, I believe. The application is available on our website, and it's an entirely digital application this year. They don't get a confirmation? Okay, I'll circle back to our team here. I don't think it was designed to have a confirmation, but it should. So I will confirm and see what we can do about that.
It's very confusing because you can't print it out and you submit it and you wonder what's happening. Then it sends back a confirmation with a printable thing of what you put in. But you couldn't proof it in advance, so I found a mistake because since you don't see the whole pages at once
Sure.
when you're doing it, and you don't get a chance to print it and proof it before submitting, I found a mistake, and I had to email back and say this question is wrong, because I couldn't see what it pertained to. But I did get a confirmation back with a printable hard copy
Okay,
of what I
let me
submitted.
see, I'll talk to the people in our staff who helped create that, and I'll circle back to them and see. And like anything, it's the first time we're doing it, there's gonna be some kinks, and we're trying to make it work, and we're trying to move to this all-digital system, which I think on the whole is a net positive, even though there might be a couple of kinks this first year. But any other feedback you have, please let me know, shoot me an email, or give me a call, and we'll try to work everything out as best we can.
And while we're at it, maybe that the board office should get notification that this member reapplied.
Okay, great.
Just want to put in a reminder that mailing to the chair of 24/7 is no longer here.
Got it. Now, I know for some reason, every time I update it, it's not, you're not the only person that's happened to, so.
I didn't hear.
That the contact information, the old chair is still getting the email notifications, but a few, even on the borough service cabinet, for some reason Outlook is quirky the way the address book or the distribution list gets set up, so I apologize for that, but we'll make sure that you get it moving forward. And if you don't get it, call me, and I'll make sure that you receive it. Anything else? I'll entertain a motion to adjourn.
Motion to adjourn.
You guys are in such a rush to get out of here. We're having such a good time. We have a second for that motion. Okay, great. Thank you very much. Next meeting is Tuesday, March 1st. Reminder, bylaws subcommittee and election law subcommittee, please stay behind.